Right there, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, good job.
Well, good morning. Good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Angie Mock, the publisher and CEO of the San Antonio Report. And welcome to the first of many civic engagement events that we'll be hosting in 2023. This first one, a conversation with County Judge Peter Sakai. Important, newsworthy civic engagement events like this would not be possible without our sponsors. And our innovation top sponsor for this event today is University Health System, and we are pleased to have their president and CEO, George Hernandez, with us, along with Jim Adams, the Bexar County Hospital District Board of Managers Chair. Thank you both for your generous support. And we also have wonderful sponsors via Metropolitan, Spur Sports and Entertainment, Brooks, the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, Greater SATX, and the Somerset Foundation sponsors our civic events throughout the year. We are thrilled to be hosting this event in collaboration with KLRN. We reached out and have been working with them, and what an amazing partner for us to have in this amazing studio. So Sherry, Arthur, the whole amazing KLRN team, thank you so much. If you are among our supporters, our members here live with us today or live streaming, thank you. Thank you so much for your support. Standing up a newsroom, a local newsroom of 16 journalists is no easy feat these days, and it's your membership and your support that allows us to do that. If you're not a member and you're here with us today in the studio or on our live stream, maybe today's the day that you decide to invest in independent, credible local news that's free to all in our community. So it's easy, just go to our website, you'll see a donate button, and you can become a member as well. So let's get this conversation started. I'd like to introduce our editor-in-chief, Leigh Munsil. Leigh's been with us a little over a year. Prior to that, she did 10 years in D.C. in national political reporting with CNN, Politico, and others. But she got her start in local news in Texas at the Dallas Morning News. So Leigh, I'll hand it over to you, and thank you so much, Judge Sakai, for being with us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Angie. We'll do a quick introduction. I'm going to speak to the camera for a minute, but I promise it's just for KLRN to have if they need it later. Hi, I'm Leigh Munsil. Welcome to the first 100 Days, a live event with the San Antonio Report, speaking with Judge Peter Sakai about his vision for Bexar County and its future. Really glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the opportunity to come before the public and kind of briefly, in the best way I can, kind of lay out what the Sakai agenda will be and what the Sakai administration at Bexar County will be.
Okay. Well, if you don't know, Judge Peter Sakai has a long history in the judiciary here in Bexar County, 25 years, most recently as a judge on the Children's Court. And he was elected in November with just over 57% of the vote. So strong support within the county for this new administration you're about to embark upon. We are technically 26 days into it already. I understand the first 100 days is not exactly what we're dealing with at this point, but it's important to talk about the first 100 days of any elected official's time in office, because it gives us, the public, the first look at how you're going to govern, what matters most to you, how you'll prioritize, and how quickly you'll get started on some of the things you talked about during the campaign season. So we're so glad to have you here. The first question I wanted to ask was, we know that you're accustomed to holding a gavel, given all of your judiciary experience, but how is Commissioner's Court treating you so far?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you to the KLRN studios and all the employees here. Thank you to San Antonio Report, Angie Lee, and all the staff at SA Report. You all have provided an important function, that is to get the news in the most unbiased way out. And obviously, y'all help host a forum during the campaign with my opponent, and I appreciate you were the moderator, and I just want to say thank you for being able to keep us two on track, and this, we're able to have a wonderful conversation. That's the reason why I agreed to do this.
Thank you.
But your question was, how's it different?
Yeah.
That has probably been the biggest adjustment. You know, as a district court judge for nearly 26 years, I was the boss, the person that made the rules. I made the decisions whether evidence came in, or I told attorneys, sit down, be quiet. I ruled the roost. Commissioner Court is obviously a whole different environment, and I knew that when I decided to step up and run for county judge. And so I have 4 of the colleagues, and I have made it clear at the first meeting that I want civility, I want decorum, and I want a sense of order. And so that's one trademark or something that I'm going to insist upon, is that we don't interrupt each other. We listen to everybody who comes into the courtroom. We treat everybody with respect, even those that people we don't agree with. And we're working through that. I am appreciative to my fellow county commissioners. They have really responded. And so I'm really looking forward to this first term to establish whatever legacy the Sakai administration will leave.
Great. Well, I was wondering if there's anything that surprised you, like since coming into the office. I mean, is the technology not what you were expecting, or you had to set up a new email account? And what have the nuts and bolts of the first 26 days been like?
How to figure out how to get into my office. Judge Wolf or whoever designed the Paul Elizondo Tower has like a maze to get to the secure elevator, and I guess they decided for security reasons. So for the first day or two, I would always take the wrong turn and end up in another county office. I think I finally figured it out. It's always a right turn, right turn, right turn. Don't take a left turn. And so that has probably been the biggest transition. It's just to kind of get my sense of footing. And again, working with my fellow colleagues, I understand some of them are going to have to understand the personality I have. They're going to have to understand the rules or the boundaries that I'm going to ask for, and it'll be a work in progress. But I am so far the meetings have gone well. I've been complimented about how I run the meetings, and we're going to make Bexar County government work.
Great. Well, I was just going to mention that your election marks Bexar County's first change in leadership in more than 2 decades. Your predecessor, Judge Wolf, shaped the county significantly since taking office in 2001. On the day you took the oath of office, our San Antonio Report headline, I believe, called it a new era for Bexar County. I think rightly, if you had to summarize the focus of your new era in one sentence.
Oh my.
I know I'm an editor, I'm sorry. In one sentence, how would you describe it?
I would describe it with the following words, and then if you'll allow me to extrapolate that. It's about revitalization, it's about retooling, and it's about re-energizing Bexar County government and reforming Bexar County government in the vision and the leadership I provide. Now, if I can kind of take that out.
Tell us what that means to you.
Revitalization means, I believe, first of all, having worked there 26 years, I know most of the employees that work at the Bexar County Courthouse. And I know people that are the housekeepers, maintenance, all the way up to the elected officials. And so when I say about revitalization, I'm talking about treating all the employees with dignity and respect, recognizing that their morale, their work environment, their compensation are all part and parcel of Bexar County providing better government. And so I want to make sure that I give them the dignity and respect they deserve. An example, I say good morning to all the maintenance workers every morning. I thanked them when they came in on New Year's Day on my swearing in. I said, thank you for coming in on a holiday. I asked my staff, did we do anything special? And my staff kind of stumbled on that. And I said, well, I hope you did, because these workers came in on a holiday for my ceremony. I also understand, and one of the issues I'm sure we're going to touch on is the jail.
Yeah.
And so I'm reaching out to the deputies. I'm going to roll call. In fact, today I'm going to roll call and talk to the deputies, not to promise anything, but to tell them I will listen to them, I will work with them, but I'm also going to work with the elected official, the sheriff. I'm going to work with the jail administration. I'm going to have my staff and the county staff working together to try to fix those issues that are confounding and causing issues at the jail. I really think, yes, there's a lot of issues, not only compensation, but it's just the work environment. And so that is an example of revitalization. A retooling, so to speak, would be to see how we can make Bexar County government more effective and efficient. You kind of touched on it. We still use technology that's outdated. I had a meeting with the county auditor. I had a meeting with the purchasing agent already. And they're using technology that's 20, 30 years old. So I understand when either citizens, vendors, the customers of Bexar County complain. You know, why aren't we getting paid on time? And I've been explained, Judge, we still use the court system that I came out of. Still uses the same paper system that I did 30 years ago. To me, that's unacceptable. So we need to employ technology so that we can make it more effective and efficient. And so that re-engagement is about connecting with the citizens. I want to see more transparency, openness. A lot of times, I found that out on the campaign, our citizens don't really understand county government. It's never really been explained. And that's oftentimes why city-county government gets lumped together and we all get criticized. We really live in two separate worlds because that's the way the systems are built. So by re-engaging the citizens, by becoming more transparent, an example, I've asked I will be asking my county commissioners, let's have town hall meetings. We need to explain the budget. We need to be more transparent of how we do things. We got to make sure through newsletters. I have instructed my staff, we need to put out these type of communications so that our citizens are better informed. And the ultimate result, I want to see a more effective and efficient Bexar County government, and I want better customer service that the Bexar County government can provide. Well, so I tried to say it in one sentence, and I tried to elaborate it in more ways than one.
I appreciate you playing along with the rules, and it's helpful to hear the extrapolation as well, because you touched on a couple things that I had questions about already. But when you mentioned just now the idea of maybe making the paper court record system, moving that electronic, is that what you're talking about? Do you know anything about what the cost of that would be or how long that would take?
It's expensive. It's what I call an infrastructure issue at the courthouse. We know with economic development, and I think Brooks City Base is an example, and the Toyota plant, you got to have the roads, you got to have the water lines, you have to have sewer lines, you have to have the electrical, and now in today's world, we need internet access to deal with the digital divide. And so what we need to do is put the infrastructure at the courthouse so that we don't have to rely on outdated mode, because ultimately I have my elected officials saying, I need more staff. I need more staff to take paper. And so I'm like, that's just ineffective. That's costly. Why can't we use technology? And the reality is, as a judge, people don't recognize this, but in children's court, I push that. We have e-filing, we have e-payment, we have e-invoice. the attorneys key into the children's court technology, but it was on a micro basis. They hit the button that goes to the judge hits a button for electronic signature, it goes electronically to the auditor. That time process cut probably 2 weeks to 2 days. And then we electronically deposit it, so no more checks. So if you think about how we live in today's world, and you look at what we do at the courthouse, you go, my gosh, you guys have a long way to go. And I understand that's sometimes Bexar County doesn't always stay up to it. So that's my vision for Bexar County, is to really work on making the process more effective. I think people will then appreciate Bexar County much, much more. And I apologize, but my allergies are killing me.
You're all right. I'm sorry. I know it's that time of year. The cedar will get you.
It's killing me.
Well, I wanted to ask about the paper system in the courts. Is that contributing to the backlog of cases that's leading to overcrowding at Bexar County Jail? They're separate issues.
That's separate issues.
Okay.
And that's an issue that I bring. That is in my wheelhouse to know about the justice system. Just to deal with, if you allow me to extrapolate on the jail population. Yeah. People just keep blaming the sheriff. What people don't realize with the jail overpopulation, it's like a four-legged stool. There's a leg of the sheriff who runs the jail. There's a leg of the district attorney's office that files the cases and puts people into jail. There's a leg of the courts that resolve cases and either keep people out, send them to prison, or dismiss the case and they come out. And then there's commissioner's court that funds all the processes. We have to decide the budget and the use of taxpayer money. And so if you think about a stool like what we're sitting on, the strength of this stool are the pegs that bind it, not one leg. The stool cannot stand on one leg. It needs all four legs, and they need to be connected. So my wheelhouse, so to speak, is to bring it together. The court system must move cases. I'm committed to increase the amount of jury trials. Get those out, because the jury trials move the system. Civil cases will move. Criminal cases will move. We will see more and more case dispositions. The sheriff needs help, because at this time we have anywhere from 600 to 700 prisoners that are ready to go over to the state of Texas to go to prison, and they're sitting in our jail because the prison system is backed up. We got probably about 200 to 300 prisoners, inmates that are in there because they have mental health issues. That's something I ran on. We should not be incarcerating the mentally ill, but we have no beds. So I have to strategize and figure out in the most cost-effective way how we're going to move that. If we were able to just move that population, the jail overtime, the sheriff has assured me the jail overtime issues would go away. So I have to make a decision. Do we go ahead and commit to build a facility or build a transitional program that can move these prisoners? Or do I just say status quo? Sheriff, that's your problem. And I think that's my strength. I am going to sit with the sheriff as an elected official and say, Sheriff, I need you and your staff to come up with the ideas. If not, we did 2 feasibility studies that were done in the prior administration. And I'll be honest with you, we paid money for that. Yeah. And the waste of taxpayer money is to put those studies on a shelf and say, nobody reads it, nobody does anything. I am going to pull those studies back out and ask the sheriff, have you implemented the recommendations that these 2 experts, it turned out the 2 studies are very aligned and make very similar recommendations.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions. Do you think the studying time is over on the jail and there are already some clear actions that could be taken? I mean, is it staffing? Is it maintenance? Where do you start first with the jail?
All the above. Okay. And so
you pick one?
What I said about revitalization, we need to revitalize the jail. We have not taken care of that facility. And so we need to make, I mean, one of the issues that and it came up during the campaign, was the fact that there was an issue with locks. Yeah. That's unexcusable. Why has Bexar County allowed a security issue there? We also have an issue with jail overtime and the fact that one of the recommendations was that they should shift from an 8-hour shift to 12-hour shifts. The sheriff has been saying that there are issues there, so I need to have a private discussion with him to say, Sheriff, what's the problem here? We also know, and today I am going to meet with the deputies. And I need to hear from them directly. That's the most important part of this process. I need to show them dignity and respect. And I need to say, hey, I'm not going to promise you anything. You know, I know you guys want more money or you want more benefits, but at the same time, I've learned over the years with Child Protective Services and the caseworkers there, same issues. And what I heard clearly from caseworkers, it was never about money. It was about the work environment and about the dignity and respect they were given. So that's what's so important for me. Deputies, I'm here, I'll listen. I'm not going to promise you anything, but we're going to make it better. And we're going to have the sheriff, his administration, the deputies, their union, and ultimately Commissioner's Court all aligned. And we're going to come up with solutions, and I want accountability within all that process. So deputies, if I get you stuff, what are you going to give me? I want better service, I want more accountability, and I don't want to hear all these things that happen at the jail or that come out at the San Antonio report with whatever bad choices deputies make.
Got it. Well, it's been difficult to see movement at the jail so far. There have been 2 studies done that were released last year. There's been a lot of tries to get this right. Why do you think it's been such a hard issue to actually make headway on?
I am finding out right now, but I would probably it's probably a lack of communication or a lack of, this is one thing I picked up from, and see that a lot of what I bring to the county judge is what I learned as a district court judge, trying to help the child welfare system. It's about communication. It's about collaboration. It's about coordination. And so what I mean by that, you got to talk. Then you got to find out and bring the experts in, like the studies have done, and you got to say, what are the solutions? And then you and all the stakeholders have to figure out, then how do we make it happen? Do we need extra deputies? Do we need the technology? What do we need to do to make things work? And then finally, it's coordination, which means execution. And that's something that I was very big on as a judge in children's court. Okay, we're going to create a program, but I want to see a return of investment, the ROI. That's something big on the corporate side of the world. And so I want to see if I give more money over to the jail, to the deputy, whatever, or invest in more technology, then what I get in return. And that's the perspective I bring. So data, metrics, analysis. I'm an old sports fan. There's the book Moneyball, which says, you know, you can measure even athletic talent as opposed to just looking at people and say, well, that looks like a great ball player. No, how do you perform and execute? And that's what I hope to bring to Bexar County government.
You mentioned baseball.
I opened that door, didn't I?
There you go. Since our minor league baseball team, the San Antonio Missions, were acquired by a new owner group in November, renewed speculation has arisen about the possibility of a downtown baseball stadium. Do you support building a stadium closer to downtown, and have you been briefed on where that stadium might go?
Okay, well, let me give some background so people will say, well, didn't he say this, and what is he saying now? During the campaign, it became an issue, and my position during the campaign was I was not supporting a baseball stadium with taxpayer money. And I'm still at that position. But I have met with the local baseball ownership. I'm very impressed. They got David Robertson, Manu Ginobili. I mean, who wouldn't want to love to help a local group like that? And so in my conversation to them, I had a conversation much like I'm having with you. Look, I know what I said, and I still am there. But I'm a judge. And again, that's my wheelhouse. The judge always listens to all the evidence. He brings in the experts or the people that will help him understand the issues. He will hear both sides, and then he has to make a decision. And that's what I said. You baseball owners need to make your case. And then I bring in that filter of, if I'm having to provide taxpayer money, what do I get in return? What's my ROI? And one way I help them understand my perspective of, are you a good philanthropic citizen? You look at HEB, you look at Valero, you look at the Spurs, you look at our big corporations here. Yeah, they probably do get some tax benefits, tax incentives, perhaps tax money in order to help whatever projects. But think about what they do for our community. Think of what the Spurs do. That's why, you know, I'm confident with the Spurs that they're staying put, and we're going to try to help them in the best way we can. But I can then say to the taxpayer, if I'm criticized, that, look, but this is what we get back in return from them, and I want to see what they do for children and families. And ultimately, that's what was my clear message. I think sometimes the political debate and the political discussion was, well, Judge, you're just a social welfare, you know, you just want everything. I said, no. What I want is to look at every decision I have through an equity lens. Is it good for our community? A baseball stadium downtown would obviously be a boon to economic development. But I told the baseball owners, you need to figure out how you're going to pay for this, and then you need to then come to us and tell us what you need from the county. I also said, we need to get the city of San Antonio involved. We need to get the state of Texas involved. Hey, maybe there's some federal monies out there, and we can then all leverage. That's what I mean by communication, collaboration, and coordination. We can make this work. And I'm not wanting Bexar County just to stay isolated or out of the talk. We want to be in there. We want to see it. But I am going to be very insistent on accountability and ultimately the execution to make sure that if I have to use taxpayer money, then I truly believe it's best for Bexar County. And so as a baseball fan and a fan of Moneyball, I love baseball. I want baseball to succeed. And even though it's perhaps not major league, it's still a venue and where families can go. I want to know what the baseball ownership is going to do to reach out to the little leagues. I want to know what they're going to reach out to CYO leagues. Reach out to the high school baseball teams. What are they going to do to help support baseball? So that it is truly a community project. It is a community, so everybody gets buy-in to this baseball stadium. I hope that they can get all the private equity and get private financing, and I can just say I could be at the ribbon cutting and take credit for it. But if not, yes, I will look and hear of any proposal that they bring to me. And then understanding, I got 4 of the county commissioners, and I've also explained in county government, for a body of 5, you need 3 votes. So I will not speak for my county commissioners. They will have to do the same presentation for them. Perhaps in the Judge Wolf administration, you kind of went to Judge Wolf, and whatever Judge Wolf wanted, things could probably just happen because of the power and the authority that Judge Wolf had. I want to see a shared power among my fellow commissioners. They have to do what's right for their precincts and their constituents. And I'm also going to hope that they can see things from a county perspective. Yes, we need to protect the south side, east side, west side, north side, but we also have to do what's best for the entire county. And that's what I hope to bring. Let's remember what's best for everyone.
Well, thank you for that answer. I feel like there were a couple of things in there that were very interesting to me to hear. The emphasis as you look through priorities of project, the emphasis on community involvement, philanthropy as perhaps an argument that works with you as opposed to just economic development on its own?
Well, I think that because of my experience, I see that all intertwined. Perhaps the business community doesn't look at that. Perhaps the Commissioner's Court hasn't looked at that. But I think that's what all government should do, because then it creates, I think, the best decision for taxpayer. Remember, the taxpayer, for the county taxpayer, is also the city taxpayer, is also the federal taxpayer, is also the state taxpayer. The taxpayer is the same person. And sometimes we kind of think, well, the county has to do, and that goes to what I call the silos of bureaucracy. We're only going to do what we're supposed to do, or we got our own deals. And it should be a vertical process. Where I will perhaps have a change of attitude is I truly believe it should be bottom up. I got to be careful how I say this. Things don't work well, or I can't rely on Washington, D.C. I can't rely on Austin, Texas. What I can rely is Bexar County and Bexar County Commissioner's Court and what we can do. So that's why I'm big on public-private partnerships. I'm big on pilot projects. It's what we did in Children's Court. And we had some wonderful programs that are now national models. And so now everybody wants to copy us. And obviously Nelson and Tracy will help create the Children's Court, a national model. So I learned that real quick, you know. I mean, I think Nelson and Tracy think big, and they created a legacy with Children's Court. And I think as the judge of the Children's Court, I took it to another level in execution.
And when you were describing earlier the equal votes of every member of the Commissioner's Court, obviously that's always the way that it's worked technically. Are you saying that maybe you would do less lobbying of your colleagues and give them more? How would you approach trying to get something you really believe in through the process?
I'm going to, it's not a matter of less lobbying. It's a matter of communicating. And I need to hear their feedback when they disagree. I'm hopeful that whatever we do, we'll always do with unanimity or near unanimous vote. But I understand we may have some 3-2. And you know what? I may be on the losing end of some of these programs and projects. And my attitude is, I made my decision. I made my vote. I'm accountable for what I did. I have to stand before the voters in 4 years, and I'll explain what I've accomplished or what I have not accomplished. And so I'm not there to look to move up the political ladder. So I'm going to make the tough decisions. I'm going to learn that I'll be held accountable for it, and I'm just going to move on. And Leigh, I guess I'm at this point in life, I want to have fun.
Well, I was going to actually, I thought about writing a question about that, but I'm glad that you brought that up. You talk a lot about service.
I opened the door for a lot of things going on.
No, you talked a lot about service over the course of the campaign, and no one would argue that that's a noble goal, an important piece of the county judge role. You serve 2 million constituents. You have a budget, at least in this past cycle, with a bunch of federal money that isn't usually there, a $2.9 billion budget this past cycle.
And 5,000 employees.
Yeah, wow.
It's a pretty good outfit.
It's a huge structure. And so obviously there's a huge responsibility in your role, but gosh, there's got to be something you're excited about. Like what are you excited about getting started on in this role?
I'm excited about being there and making the changes necessary to accomplish what I did. See, that's the thing. I'm not keeping these goals that I stated earlier as just, oh, okay, it's a campaign slogan, and you know, just if I do anything. No, if I can make Bexar County government more effective, more efficient, if I can provide, or Bexar County government can provide better customer service, if I can get my employees to say, you know what, I love working for Bexar County. The county judge recognizes me, says hello to me. That's all the legacy I want. Now, that perhaps is different from my predecessor, and I respect that. So I just want to move forward, and I understand we're going to have some really tough issues and big projects that we'll have to look at. But again, I think I've explained today my process so that the voters, the taxpayers understand, well, Judge Sakai may not agree with you, but I can at least respect the decision you made, because you did it in the best interest of our community, although we don't agree.
Now, you said that children and families will be the focus of your tenure, and so I'm going to ask you this a little bit differently. Judge Wolf was in this role for 20 years. 20 more years into the future, how do you want life to look for children in Bexar County in a way that it doesn't look right now?
Well, and another way to look at what I've already stated, I think the strategies need to be driven by equity solutions, which means we need to look at the flaws of the infrastructure. As a micro type topic, you mentioned about technology, and I said, well, we have outdated technology. We got to bring that up, and it's going to be expensive to do that. Well, we've got a digital divide. We have a digital divide where there are, and COVID highlighted the fact that there are parts of this county that have no Wi-Fi access, and therefore students were denied their education needs. And the numbers show from the studies and the data that 20% of the public school children kind of disappeared. Now, they're probably out there, and they're probably somehow, but unfortunately, we don't know the final effect down the line in another generation. Did we create another generation of dropouts that we're going to have to help support? We also know that the rates of poverty are way, way too high. We know that the rates of domestic and family violence are I mean, Bexar County is at the highest level in the state, and unfortunately, perhaps even in the nation. We've got issues to address. We've seen the tragedy in our neighboring county, Uvalde. So those situations, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when something like that is going to happen. And as county judge, I have to be ready. I have to hopefully be proactive in the best way we can. That's why we created, or Judge Wolf and the Commissioner's Court, for which I totally support, are creating a public health entity by partnering up with the University Hospital System, one of our sponsors today, with George Hernandez, who I really appreciate the leadership, along with the board chair, Jim Adams, of what they're doing to build up access to health care. Yeah. Now, one of the things I think is important, and one of the things I said on the campaign, we need to stay focused with mental health and access to mental health treatment, and we need expansion and access to drug and alcohol rehabilitation. And then the other big issue, again, and I already mentioned it, is domestic and family violence. So those are all things, Leigh, we got to work on. And so what I want to work on from the Commissioner's Court are those issues that keep, because ultimately, and this is the other big piece, what I hope to accomplish, is the education and workforce. We've got to have a healthy community. And so I am going to be insistent on our public health entity that we work on wellness, we work on nutrition. Let's work on people being overweight. And of course, I look at myself and go, okay, I've signed up for our wellness contest at the courthouse, and so is my staff. But we need to make sure that nutrition is dealt with. We know that in certain parts of our community, we have what's called food deserts. People don't have access to fruits and vegetables. We can't have that, especially when diabetes is the #1 issue in our community. And I see it at a daily basis with friends or people out in the community that suffer greatly from the disease of diabetes. So we've got to fix that. We've got to also deal with domestic and family violence, because it also affects our child abuse and neglect. There's a direct tie to that. Even though some people may want to understand that, I saw that from the courts. It's a direct tie. So we're not going to reduce child abuse and neglect unless we deal with domestic and family violence. So that's the reason why it's like a multi-level jigsaw puzzle, so to speak. We have to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah. The COVID-19 pandemic, which was a big piece of what Judge Wolf had to deal with in the last years of his tenure, it underscored the need to expand the hospital system in Bexar County. Yes. Last fall, University Health announced plans to purchase a large tract of land on the south side for a new Bexar County Health Division hospital. Can you give us an update on the status of that project?
Well, George Hernandez and Jim Adams are out there. I can pull them up here now, but Fortunately, I was invited to the signing at Texas A&M San Antonio and the University Hospital System, and they have signed off on an agreement to develop a hospital together so that we're not only going to have access to healthcare in the South Side, which is really lacking, but we're also going to partner up with Texas A&M University, and so that the academic side can tie into, so our students can have access to this to the system, whether it's jobs, it's residencies, internships, mentorships that these programs will provide. This is how we build a community, is by partnering, and that's an example of that public-private partnership, by bringing everybody together and figuring out what's best. So not only do we have the hospital on the South Side, but we also, I believe the University Hospital System has a commitment to build a hospital on the East Side, namely, I think it's the Retama, the old Retama Park area, is they're going to build another hospital out there. So Bexar County Commissioners Court, which were made by my predecessor, Judge Wolf, and commissioners, made that commitment. Plus, they took that ARPA dollars that you highlighted to create a public health entity. Yeah. We have now Dr. Andrea Guajardo, who is going to head that up, and she is a dynamo. Comes out of the incarnate word, and she comes from a real depth of knowledge, and I have instructed her that we must also make sure that mental health and drug and alcohol rehabilitation are all part of the equation in regards to wellness of our community. And so, just as a matter of the last 2 meetings, I was like, how many meetings have I had? Two. We passed a budget of $50,000 for Narcan, which is the deal with the opioid issue, and giving it to the sheriff. We spent $150,000 for the sheriff to build a wellness resting room at the jail. Yeah. And we also just gave Lifetime Recovery, a drug and alcohol rehabilitation, $2 million. So I am committed, and I am keeping my commitment to make sure that those issues are on the forefront.
Yeah, so it sounds like a pretty major expansion of county health offerings, as well as financial support from the county for these.
See, Leigh, that's part of the re-engaging the community. I want the county, I want taxpayers to son. When we say city-county, I got 26 municipalities. I got the unincorporated areas. The unincorporated areas is going to grow at an exponential amount. You're not going to see, in my opinion, that much annexation by the city, because the legislature has tended to put laws that are going to restrict that. That means those issues fall on county that don't have the authority that city government has. The city of San Antonio has tremendous authority under its home rule ordinances. County has to exist on statute. If I want some type of law, I got to go, and that's the other issue. If I want a change of law, I can't just do it by myself. I got to go to Austin and talk to, was it 150 state representatives? And there's I forgot how many state senators there are, 28, I believe. And so the process of changing law and making laws, and obviously our counties are an extension of state government. Yeah. And so I've got to convince people up there that we should give counties more power. I don't know necessarily if the people in Austin agree with that.
Tough case to make in Austin. So last summer, commissioners approved a preliminary engineering study on a project linking the Riverwalk and San Pedro Creek Culture Park. It's known as the Link Linear Park. Before that, commissioners put more than $40 million in the 2021-2022 budget for phase 1 of that project. Do you support that project, given the estimated total cost between 60 and 80 million? And do you agree that the link is necessary to spur development on the north side of town?
Well, it's very similar to the baseball stadium. You know, first of all, the link really didn't come up in discussion, and although I was aware of it, so I've kind of had to get caught up on the issues and where the county has committed to. Obviously, I don't want to undo whatever's been committed. That's, again, as a judge, whatever we agreed by contract, I got to live up to it, even though I may not like it and I may not agree with it. In regards to the link, there is a $2 million study, which I'm I'm a little bit shocked on this, a little sticker shock with that. But there's a $2 million study due out the middle of this year toward the end of the year. Again, just like what I've said, I'm not going to make a commitment till I see that feasibility study. Is it still 40 or is it now 80? Or is it somewhere in between? Is the city of San Antonio going to partner? Are we going to be able to get federal dollars? Is there ARPA money that we can leverage? Is the state of Texas willing to, because I can see the economic advantage of the link because it's connecting the Riverwalk with San Pedro Creek. So I get it. It gets tourists over to San Pedro Creek. And obviously, that's another issue that the county has to keep on its radar. How do we market San Pedro Creek? Because otherwise, we created this whole nice park, amenities, art that's included on that. But if nobody goes there, then we're going to, I guess the criticism is going to come on me, and that's the job I signed up for. So in regards to the link, I know I'm not really specifically answering it, but I'm just trying to be consistent with how I operate and how I come to a decision. Let's look at the feasibility study. Let's see what the experts say. And then let's look at all the options to make it work, including perhaps a public-private partnership. Is there private investment dollars that we can utilize? Those are all on the table. I will consider it. And if I see through the equity lens of what it's good for children and families, because I can see economic development, I can see taxes rising because of the development those create. I can see the hotel tax, hot tax they call it. And we got to bring tourism back into San Antonio. We know we need those conferences to come back. And if the link can really create this fantastic adventure for our tourists, then I will consider to support it. I could see the benefit of that project. But right now, all I can see is how much is it going to cost and how much is the county going to put in? So right now, I can't commit to that link project right now.
On that note, one of the most important pieces of the role of county judge is deciding how to appropriate money through the county budget as well as administering grants. During your first Commissioners Court meeting, you said that the Sakai Court is going to be transparent. How do you plan to ensure that the grant and budget processes are as fair as they can be without just arbitrarily picking winners and losers?
Well, first of all, that's the reason why I'm asking my county commissioners to create town hall meetings. I don't necessarily want to create my own. I want to respect the county commissioners and their involvement and be respectful that when I go to the various communities, I do so with the approval or consent of the county commission, not so much consent, but their part. I want them with me. I want them to chair the meetings. I want them to help explain the budget process and the grant process too. I also want to make sure, and I may be looking at task forces, bringing citizens to the table and putting them together. We have, in fact, I just had a meeting yesterday with our Bexar County Child Welfare Board. And now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, this ideas pop in my head. It's just the way. Perhaps our Bexar County Child Welfare Board, which is a group of concerned citizens that mainly work with the abuse and neglect, perhaps that's something I can put on them to say, hey, why don't you be the lens and perspective of all these grants? Because as it is now, my sense is that everybody just kind of goes to their commissioners, they go to the county judge, and decisions are made. And quite frankly, after 26 years, I never understood really, except some organizations and nonprofits got money and some didn't. And so, I'm not saying that that's bad, but I think taxpayers would appreciate that there's a sense of fairness, there's a sense of due process, there's a sense of level playing field. And that's the thing. I'm not going to give every nonprofit what they want. I got to see, again, return of investment. What are you giving? How much is going to admin and how much is direct cost? And then what are your numbers? I'll tell you where I learned that from, Harvey Najum. Anybody who's asked Harvey for money knows he's going to ask those tough questions. And so he has grilled me when I've asked for money from him. And so I'm now doing the same to the others.
Great. Well, thank you. I have a slightly more personal question I wanted to ask you. When you took your oath of office, you placed your left hand on your father's 1952 Bible. Your official biography tells the story of how, as a teen, your father and the rest of his family were placed in Japanese internment camps in California in the 1940s due to unfounded fears of disloyalty to the United States. You've said that the stories your father told about this violation of his civil rights led you to the legal profession and your eventual career as a judge. How did this incredible injustice in your family history make you more engaged, not less engaged, in public service?
That, give you a little background. I'm a baby boomer, so you guys can figure out, I think we got a bunch of baby boomers in the room. And so I grew up in the 60s, 70s when there was a lot of parallelism, there's a lot of activism, a lot of issues, civil rights, a lot of issues with my dad said, the hippie culture. Of course, I will admit I had long hair at one point down, and my dad responded that he had another daughter in his family. And of course, that was a dig at me. My dad and I didn't necessarily see eye to eye. I probably had a more progressive view. He also had a crew cut, so that probably gives you an idea of where he was. He was far more conservative. So we didn't see eye to eye. We always argued. And so, but there was one story that he wanted me to understand. And there was something, and he kept telling me the story, even to the point where he said we would go on an annual summer vacation to go see my relatives in California, my crazy cousins over there. And we basically would go, and he says, hold on, we're going to stop. We're going to stop and at the internment camp in Poston, Arizona, where I grew up. And it's in the middle of the Mojave Desert, and you got to go 75 miles off of Interstate 10, and you got to go straight into, and it's this God-forsaken barren territory. We stop in the middle, he goes, this is it. And I go, where? It's here. And I said, what do you mean it's here? There's nothing here. He goes, yeah, this is where I lived during World War II till I enlisted in the military. And I just was like, well, where's the building? He goes, no, it was an old Army base for the cavalry. So it was all horse barracks, which means they're all wooden structure. So when you really looked, you saw the concrete kind of pads or the concrete foundations that were still there. But all the wood structures were gone. And I said, this is where you grew up? He goes, yeah. And then I said, you said it was a bunch of horses? He says, yeah, that's where we lived in the stalls. And I, at first, had a hard time grasping that. And then as I went to school and learned about our history, the history especially in regards to racism and discrimination, it really upset me, angered me. And I said, that's not right. I mean, first of all, you got locked up because you're a Japanese American. He also told me the personal stories of how the FBI came, and there's a story what they call the no-no boys, because the FBI had to ask all Japanese Americans, do you swear your allegiance to the United States, and do you disavow your allegiance to the sovereign of Japan? And my dad told me that he was so angry at that time, and I guess that's where I get my little fire. He said, no, why should I swear my allegiance? Well, unfortunately, that puts you on an enemies list. And my grandfather actually kind of spouted off, apparently, and he got his shipped to another camp that was more restrictive. People don't understand that there was a camp in Crystal City. But the really tragedy of that is that the Crystal City camp was where you went when they were ready to ship you back to Japan. And there were Japanese Americans taken back to Japan because they were considered enemy citizens. And so those stories just struck me profoundly. And so that's the reason why, as an attorney, as a judge, now as county judge, I'm very sensitive to the rights, all rights, constitutional rights That's why I'm a big, and I don't kind of pick and choose which constitutional rights that we should obey. We should obey all of them. And we know that this country has a history of racism, has a history of discrimination. And I'll be real blunt. That's what drives me, that we should never marginalize any minority group. And we've kind of seen it during the 9/11 with the Muslims. Unfortunately, we're seeing it with Asians now. And so that's the reason why, as public officials, we need to be careful with the words we use, because it can be interpreted and then people can carry out their personal animus. And so those are the stories my dad taught me and has put me where I'm at now. And so I want to take care of the least of us. That's the reason why I'm big on looking things through an equity lens and making sure that we're taking care, because if we take care of people at the lowest level, especially those that are in the justice system, and we bring them up, and that's what my family drug court, my early childhood court taught me. We bring people that have been disconnected from society, they've been marginalized, sometimes their own families don't even want to deal with them because they've been on drugs and bad behavior. But when we basically get them off drugs, get them to understand to take responsibility, show up to work, go to work, they become successful and they become taxpayers. And I think when I see that, I think we've done a good job. So I know you've mentioned some really great projects out there, but let's never, ever forget the children and families in our community, especially the least of us.
Thank you so much, Judge Sakai, for being here. Thank you to everyone in the room for joining us for this really important civic engagement conversation. We, as the nonprofit Newsroom San Antonio Report, care about having these discussions whenever we can to talk through the issues that matter most to this community. So thank you so much. I'm going to invite now Angie Mock, our publisher, back up to the stage to thank everyone.
Thank you. A great round of applause. Thank you. Again, thank you all for being here. I did want to also thank the Board of Directors, and one of our board members is actually with us today, Leo Gomez. Thank you and the rest of the board for your service and dedication to independent nonprofit news in San Antonio. And again, thanks to our sponsors, University Health System, Spur Sports and Entertainment, Via Metropolitan, Brooks, the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, and Greater SATX and the Sumners Foundation. We have at the San Antonio Report an amazing calendar of civic engagement events for you in 2023. So please be on the lookout. We're going to be covering a lot of newsworthy issues that are important to our community. So we hope to see you at a future event. Again, thanks to KLRN, our amazing partner, who we just love working with. Great team helping us produce this event today. And last but not least, if you're not a member, today's your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leigh.
I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I didn't give you more time at the end.
No.